Hello, Acadiana, and welcome back to another episode of From Change to Change. My name is Marcus Simmons, better known as Chachi, and I'm here with my co-workers.
Hello, I'm Consuela Sway Gaines.
And hi, I'm Dr. Samika Minor.
And today we are here with another awesome episode. And look, guys, I know that I said at the last episode that I think that one would have been the most informative and most exciting. However, I think this one will give that one a run for its money. So buckle up, relax, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. And as Marcus said earlier, today we have some really special guests in the studio with us. And they are Miss Angela Eaglin of the Village 337 and Laramie Griffin of Evolve, Louisiana. How y'all doing?
Doing great.
Doing good.
It's so good to see y'all. Thanks for coming.
Thank
You guys are phenomenal. The work that you're doing in the community, I pay attention. I see the work you're doing, and it is so necessary to bring our communities together. And let's start with Village 337. When did you guys get started, and what was kind of like the first thing that ignited the Village 337?
So the Village 337 got started back in August 2020 after the murder of Trayford Perrin. A lot of people are aware of it, some people aren't, but that's how essentially we were birthed back then. That was the first person we ever advocated for collectively as an organization.
Okay, and I remember that case.
Yes.
Is it still ongoing? Has it been resolved? What's going on with that particular case?
It's still ongoing.
Still ongoing.
Yeah.
And how long has that been going on? Since
3.5 years now.
3.5 years. So it takes a minute to resolve situations like that.
Yes.
Do you think the community continues to support it? Do you see people falling off? What are you seeing with that?
I think we see a little bit of both. Some people fall off. We have some people that still continue to support. They remain solid, for the long run. But we always encourage people. It's never too late to join in the fight.
Right,
we're always
right.
here. They can always join in. But we have a little bit of both.
And so how can someone get involved if it's specific to that particular case?
They can call us or text us. We do have an office line. It's 337-247-7386. Or they can email us at thevillagelafayette@gmail.com.
Okay. So y'all make sure to get in contact with Miss Angela and get involved, because a lot of people are looking for things to get involved with. This is something positive and something for the community. And we need more people to be a part of organizations like the Village 337. So what is your overall purpose and goal of the village?
The purpose and goal of the village is just to change the atmosphere that we've grown accustomed to here. We're a civil and political rights organization. So we have all kind of people contact us about advocating for them. And we just have to kind of try to weed through the ones that we can really help and the ones that we can't. A lot of them we can't, because we're such a large umbrella of what we do. So a lot of things fall underneath that. But the goal is ultimately to change the atmosphere of Lafayette and the surrounding areas and make it better and safer for people that look like us.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, that's some amazing work. It's an amazing organization right here in Lafayette, the Village 337. Like I said, and who is your other VP?
We don't have another VP right now.
Okay.
So right now, Devon Norman is the president.
Okay.
And we have 3 other board members, and we have quite a few other people in our communities who are in leadership roles.
Okay. Good. So you're growing. How is it? It's a membership-based organization?
We do have a membership that you can apply for. It is free. There's no membership fees at this time. But yeah, we have a link, and you can apply, and They approve everybody. Everyone's welcome. There's no age limit, any race. We have people from all walks of life in our organization.
And I've heard Devon wanting to encourage younger people to get more involved.
Yes.
Because so many things are going on in the communities where we're seeing our young folks getting off track and getting caught up in a lot of things that they shouldn't be caught up in. So what better way for them to be in a more positive spotlight than to join an organization that is for the right thing, the right cause?
Yeah, definitely our focus is the young people. It's a young organization. The founders are all young people. And again, we don't discriminate against anyone. We could always use anyone old or young. But our focus is the young people. But we can learn something from other age
Right.
groups as well. You know,
Yeah.
we have and we continue to.
Okay. And Mr. Laramie, this man, we run into each other a lot at the state capitol. So he's always involved, boots on the ground with Evolve Louisiana. Tell us something about your organization and what you guys are up to.
Evolve Louisiana, I started it in 2020, and basically we started. I came up with an idea for Evolve Louisiana, which stands for Victory Over Louisiana Violence, and it was I saw a gap between politics, community, and people, and we had to find a way to bridge that gap, and so that's why it was created for that reason. It was slow rolling at first because I'm a person who just wants to get with anyone and learn, get with different organizations such as Vote, and just learn the lay of the land and what goes on. And then that's where Evolve comes in to say, hey, you may not have the capacity or understand how the community feels, and that's why I come in. That's what we often do. So it's not just an organization that's just here for a status. You know, it's here for a connection with different people, different walks of life, whether it be prison reform, voting, our humanitarian efforts, emergency efforts, homelessness, knowing rights and responsibilities, and just teaching the people how you can really simplify politics to people, and that's where we thrive at. We simplify a lot of things. Just explained to a young lady the other day how important it is to vote, as far as voting for a judge, and understanding that even though you can't recall a judge, that's the only elected position that you can't recall. So understanding that judge can control your community for a very long time, and they don't win by too many votes. So that's where we come in. That's in a nutshell, and also getting them to thrive economically, which is a major portion, because there are a lot of things that we don't know about, which pulls our community back. And if we come together collectively and find out how can we build ourselves up and become more independent and not so dependent on things that are given to us. And I believe that wholeheartedly, because with me in my organization, with the multiple people that help, because it's not just me. If it was just me, it would not go anywhere. It's multiple people, multiple minds, many conversations, a lot of reading, a lot of learning, emails after email after email. So it's not just about one individual. It's about creating a space that the people feel comfortable with and that they can learn and thrive. So.
And how can people get involved in your organization?
They can call straight to my cell phone, 225-800-9806. You can call or text. Texting is just fine. Any time of the day or night, whether it be an emergency situation, something you don't feel comfortable with, talking to anyone else, or Facebook and Instagram, Evolve Louisiana. If they contact us, DM us. I do answer personally at any time of the day, any time of the night. We have no boundaries. We have no limits. We don't take days off, no holidays or anything. We will answer, and we will get to the bottom of whatever you need.
Okay. So I know you guys, the two organizations, you guys work collectively. Y'all work together. And I know there's a particular situation that recently came up. I know you can't really talk too much about it, but we would just kind of like to hear, you know, what your take is and what's going on with the situation and how folks can come out to support what you're doing in those efforts.
So the situation that you're referring to is the 11-year-old out of New Iberia who was arrested for first-degree murder of a 36-year-old man. That's the situation you're referring to. When we got wind of it, she had already been arrested on November 29th of 2023, and you know the phone started ringing. We started to hear a lot of buzz, and it took a couple of weeks to kind of calm the noise down. But when me and Ange contacted each other, we said that something has to be done about this. What is being done, and what can we do to keep this from diminishing in the news with all the noise and all the clickbaiting that really goes on a daily basis. So, you know, we're working together diligently on that, daily on this, with everything that's going on with that situation. And it's a delicate situation because it's an
Right.
11-year-old that is accused of something that we don't believe as a community, and her family doesn't believe that she's capable of doing. And so that's what we're standing in the gap for.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it's unusual. It's something that you don't see. You see a whole family almost behind bars for one, you know, for an incident, and it's sad to see, especially in this area. That's something I've never witnessed before. And so, what are your plans moving forward as far as getting the community more knowledgeable about what's going on with that particular case?
I think the plans is to just keep advocating for her, keep putting the word out, letting people know, hey, this is happening. This is what you can do to support us. We do have some call to actions that we plan on organizing soon. One of them is a visual that Brother Lammer was mentioning earlier, but we're going to do some things, and we need people to come out in numbers and bring people with them and show support for this 11-year-old.
Right, right.
Okay, the trial,
listen-
let's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying the trial, you know, you want to tell our viewers about the trial that's coming up?
Oh, yeah. So yesterday was the arraignment at Iberia Parish Courthouse. We got there at 9:30 a.m. and everyone was presented their charges, understood their charges, and so the judge set a date for the trial for 11-year-old to start on March 7th at 1 p.m. That is going to be a rally. That is going to be a full-blown call for action, you know, just to show unity and to show care about this 11-year-old who we know that it is incarcerated and has been for the last 42 days for something that we know that she wouldn't commit. So we want to ask the community to please come out and support this young lady, because we wouldn't want this to happen to anyone.
Right.
You know, if someone's involved in something, arrest those people. Don't arrest anyone just because you can and you have the power to. We have there's a problem in this area with abuse of power, and on top of racism and just people being unjustifiably incarcerated. And so we believe that wholeheartedly. And I'm going to say it again. I'm still so glad my sister called me, because we continued to have a concern after the news reports stopped, and we kept talking about it, mentioning it on Facebook, and she called me up. I said, you know what, let's do it. And within hours, we were able to get the answers that we needed, connected to the people that we wanted to, and I got the answers from many different areas. So people are still concerned. Every post that we make and people that we call, they have no problem. Just as with votes, you guys had no problem with coming through yesterday and supporting this young lady and her family. So on March 7th at 1 p.m., we're asking the community to come out on the courthouse steps to talk about the situation and really support this young lady, because this is going to be forever traumatizing to her. It definitely is, especially with the juvenile system that we deal with in this state. And it's just other situations that have happened that really concerns us about this juvenile system heavily, especially
Right.
over the last year and the years prior. So the next call to action is going to be probably in a couple of weeks. Um, Probably in a couple of to a few weeks,
Yeah.
I
Okay,
believe.
okay.
Especially to pray for this family, pray for her mental health, and and just put it in the atmosphere that something needs to happen as far as fairness, as far as this situation. And it's very, very important to us, and it touches the community and people around on a moral level, on a moral level. So, and that's not nothing you can find in any law book, but it deals with the heart, and I believe that that should be implemented in the judge's decision and the prosecution's the decisions, and it definitely wasn't, but it wasn't in the investigation and how it happened and when it happened. So we just want things to happen correctly and for us to resolve the situation so this young lady can go back to her normal life and live her life.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something at 11 years old to be facing um, such a high degree of a charge as
Hmm.
first or second degree murder. And so we need to, the community absolutely needs to stand behind her and her family, and support, um, and really pay attention to what's going on.
Hmm.
To really show up at the courthouse on March 7th, and be supportive, because it could be anyone's child.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can
Hmm.
be anyone's child. A lot of people tend to turn that blind eye and be like, "Oh,
It ain't my child.
my
Don't have
kids are
nothing to do with
good.
me.
They're okay." But
That is true.
Yeah.
it could easily happen to anyone, and it's not just her. It's her brother. It's her mother. It's a whole family, and it's sad to see that.
Hmm.
It's so sad to see that. Like I said, I've never witnessed anything like that before, and I've been dealing in the criminal justice system about 30 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and to see something to this extent in this area, I've never seen it.
It's disheartening.
It is.
I have my youngest is 15, so like you say, it could be any one of us, who are mothers, fathers, and it is so unheard of. I've never heard anything like this. That's
Right.
why I had questions like the backstory. It's like, the articles that we read
Hmm.
were so vague. It didn't even go into detail the connection,
Hmm.
so like I said, I had so many questions.
Greetings, Southwest Louisiana. Welcome back to another episode of From Change to Change. And of course, the weather is bad, but to assure we get this out to you guys, Zoom is our safety method. So today on our show, we'll have Jennifer Landry with Flick, and she's also a vote member. We'll have Melanie Champagne. She's a local educator and vote member. Then we'll have Angela Egan, Vice President of Village 337, as well as Reverend Devon Trey Norman, President of Village 337.
About this episode, guys. I have to say, because I know it's an episode focused on youth, and I'm an educator myself, and so I'm super excited. We got 4 really, really great interviews coming up.
Y'all just sit back and enjoy, because it's going to be a lot of information coming your way.
All right, and welcome to From Chains to Change. And we are joined here today by Miss Jennifer Landry, who is a local community organizer here in Lafayette, member of multiple different organizations, and works with youth on a regular basis. Jennifer, if you would, real quick, just if you would introduce yourself, tell the folks sort of what organizations are you involved in, and how and why is it that you are so involved with youth and criminal justice reform, specifically about youth?
Sure. My name is Jennifer Landry, like Mr. Matt just said. I am one of the chapter organizers here in Lafayette for Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children, as well as another organization, Residents Organized for Housing Louisiana. And on top of that, we also have our own nonprofit organization, Speaking to Inspire Through Experience, which also has Bridging the Gap. We have a mentorship program underneath that umbrella called Bridging the Gap. So what inspired me is the love of children, for one. The love of children. I love children. I see some of the negativity that is surrounding the youth and a lot of these new laws that are being passed to criminalize them. I mean, at the end of the day, they are children. They're children, and just like I'm a mother. I'm a mother first, and I tell all of the kids that I work with, I'm a mama, and my job is to make sure that you are taken care of and you're treated fairly. So that's why. Just being a mom.
I know that personal experience is really, really important to you and drives some of your work. So, how long have you been working with youth criminal justice reform? And thinking about that, what are some of the biggest needs that you see in the youth space?
Uh-huh. Um, I've been working with it it's been 3 years, so it's going on 3 years. And some of the needs, honestly, is mentorship. Mentorship is so important. That positive role model in these children's lives is important, and that's a driving force to get them to go in the right direction. And that's one of the reasons why we started our program. Because I mean I feel if we as adults step in and kind of guide the children and let these children know, hey, the things you're doing, 9 times out of 10, I did it before, but this is what I did differently. And this is why I am where I am today. So that's important.
That is very important. So you mentioned a couple of your organizations at the start. I want to talk to you about Flick first, because Flick is a sort of partner sister organization to Vote. A lot of the members cross over. Here in Lafayette, we see each other at meetings all the time. What is Flick? You mentioned what the acronym stands for. What does Flick do? And then where is Flick? I know you're in Lafayette, I'm in Lafayette, but Flick is larger than just Lafayette.
Yes, definitely. So Flick is an organization that does advocacy work for incarcerated children, as well as children that are at risk for the school to prison pipeline. So if you're getting expelled and you're getting suspended in school, our job is to come in and teach and guide, the parents or the guardian on how things should be done, especially if you have an IEP. We want to make sure that when these children are at school and the school is trying to push them out, that they are following all guidelines to the T when it comes to these children. And same thing as them being incarcerated. We make sure that their needs are being met while they are incarcerated. Proper education, mental health. Those are the things that we come in as a group to combat. We take action, and we are very, very passionate about that part. Flick has been around since 2003. And there are chapters in New Orleans. That is the home, New Orleans. We recently opened up a new chapter. Well, reopened up a chapter in Shreveport. There's also a chapter in Lake Charles, and again Lafayette.
Okay. Yeah, I know that one of the great things about Flick is it's multifaceted. There is direct advocacy, there's direct support that Flick provides to families, to students, And you mentioned both students who are, or I say students, youth who are incarcerated, but then also students who are in schools trying to disrupt that school to prison pipeline that you mentioned. But then also Flick does not just those direct services, they do the advocacy part. The first time that I met the director of Flick, Gina Womack, was at the Capitol testifying about a bill. They were working to revise the code of conduct for students and get some more restorative practices into the Louisiana code and laws. And so I think it's one of the great things about Flick and along with Vote is that they do multiple things in their advocacy. Some of it is the direct action, some of it is direct support, and then it's the advocacy part. And then there's also the education part. I know you and Chad have been educating everybody in Lafayette and trying to get the word out for everybody about Flick and about the youth and about working with schools and working with mentorship all over. So definitely excited to get to share that message. You mentioned mentorship as one of the biggest needs. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about mentorship and how that led you to create your own organization, because you started on this with Flick and working with Flick, which is a great, tremendous organization that does work statewide, not just in Lafayette. But that work sort of propelled you to create your own organization. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how did that come to be? Because, right, like you said, you've only been doing this for 3 years and you have sort of been nonstop, and not many people create their own organization in 3 years based on the advocacy work they do.
Yes, definitely. So Flick is they first of all, they don't do direct action. They do the advocacy part. And by us working in the community, we saw there were a lot of youth here that were being locked up. They were being incarcerated, especially in school. Even in school, you have the SROs in school, and one of the biggest problems is they are referring them to the judge. They are now, once you get in trouble in school, you're being referred to the judge, and now you have a criminal record. So meeting with a lot of people in the community that work with these kids, a lot of them would always say, man, these children really need somebody to look up to. They need guidance, they need help. And also being with Flick, we come in contact with a lot of parents. And one of the things that the parents were saying a lot is they really need mentors. Can you help us to help mentor my child? My child is going down the wrong path. They need some help. So at that point, I decided, and I'll say me because when I get it in my head, I'm going for it. Chad is more of a, let's just wait. And I say, no, we have to do something. So at that point, I decided it's time to do something. So one of the first things, honestly, I wanted to do was do a communication workshop. I wanted to start a communication workshop between the parent and the youth because I saw that gap. There's a tremendous gap of communication. And I saw it with my children. My daughter was killed in 2016. And it was a lack of communication that we had. And I didn't know some of the things that was happening in her life till she was already gone. She didn't feel comfortable coming to tell me some of the things she was going through. So I didn't want other parents to experience that same hurt. I wanted parents to be able to have a conversation with the children and vice versa. So that was my main focus, that communication. But then I started saying, okay, well, now we need to help them a little bit more. So let's help them to better themselves. We want to see them on a great path. So I said, well, let's do some conflict resolution. Conflict resolution, that's going to help. Career exploration, we do team building, community activities, civic engagement, and we also teach them about drug and mental health awareness. So that was my motivation right there, just to help the kids.
That's such a well-rounded sort of approach and sort of holistic. I think we use the term often like a wraparound services and wraparound approach to talk about that holistic approach to addressing things, right? And that mental health aspect is so important, but so often overlooked and maybe under-resourced, especially in our communities. There's so much so many resources going into other things. And I think we've saw in this this special crime session, in this legislative session, we're always willing to put money into incarceration, but very rarely putting money into those preventative measures. And that's so important when it comes to youth, especially. And I say this as an educator, right? Somebody who works with youth and works in education and does work in the school to prison pipeline. The prevention is so much more important than anything that comes after. And so great work by you and your husband, Chad. Want to wrap up real quick and ask you, if people want to contact you, how should people contact you?
So you can reach me at 337-419-9019 or Chad at 337-419, I'm sorry, 337-304-6860.
Okay.
We also have chapter meetings once a month, and we have a special one coming up on the 31st, and it's just for moms, so it's all women. This is going to be one for women, and we will be honoring mothers.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know you said at the very top, that's one of the reasons that you got into this work is your experience as a mother. So make sure to join Flick for their meeting and check out them and build those connections. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're run out of time today, but I'm sure we will see you again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, and welcome back to our next interview on From Chains to Change. We are joined by Melanie Champagne, and she is an educator, but she is also a vote member. And she is going to join us today to talk a little bit about her story of self, a little bit about youth and criminal justice reform. Welcome, Melanie. First, if you could introduce yourself to everybody, tell them a little bit about you and what brought you to vote.
Absolutely. So I've been a teacher for 15 years. I've taught physical, like in brick and mortar schools, as well as virtual. So as a young teacher, my first year of teaching, I was teaching at a school that had a lot of children with some adverse childhood experiences. At the beginning, I thought that I was prepared for that, but I wasn't. And so it was through learning how to both teach and teach students that have a lot of their needs not being met. Those were two things that I learned to juggle. And so I came to vote because it was through learning that some of my students had incarcerated parents. It was through learning about the impact that it had on their lives and seeing that full scale play out was more than what a classroom teacher can handle. And I started noticing a lot of the safety nets that could be provided to give them the best chance of a thriving life was insufficient. And I thought, well, I think that I want to be the best teacher I can, and that extends even outside of the classroom. So I joined Vote to figure out what it is that I can do that can contribute to my students' life, both academically, but also prepare them and hopefully advocate for their rights and their parents' rights to return home and to have those connections and build those needs so that way they can come to school fed, loved, sheltered. And so that's why I came to Vote, because to me it felt like that is something that I wanted to do for them. That's something that was needed.
That is a fantastic story. And you mentioned a couple of things there I want to follow up on. One, you mentioned really the connection that you saw between being an educator in schools and our criminal justice system, which a lot of times people don't think that those two things go together, right? That they're not connected. They think of them as far apart as possible. You mentioned the sort of social safety nets, and then you mentioned adverse childhood experiences. I was wondering if you could follow up a little bit on both adverse childhood experiences, which some of our viewers may know as ACEs. It's been there's been more in the news about ACEs and adverse childhood experiences recently, but then also some of those safety nets, and especially with youth. What are some of the consequences. And so, what are some of the scenarios that play out? What are some of the things that you've seen around adverse childhood experiences and safety nets, both there being safety nets or the lack thereof of safety nets?
I love this question, Matt, because students don't come into the class saying, I have a lot of needs that aren't being met. I have parents that are incarcerated. These are things that they don't share. But when you peel back the curtain to their behaviors or their absences, that's when I started finding out that they're living with a grandparent or they're flip-flopping from loved one to loved ones, families taking them in, feeling that that may not be the best situation. So I saw them going back and forth to different family members, and that was one of the first things that I noticed, is that there's not a stability in the house. And so when I started learning more about the impact of incarceration, which we know incarcerated parents is one of the 10 bullet points on the ACEs, that already is giving them an unfair situation. So they're coming into school with not having their buffers. So we know that a lot of their parents may have had some addictions. They may have had some their own adverse childhood experiences. And watching that play out in both their mental health, their physical health, I knew that this was something that I needed to learn a little bit more. And I watched a documentary, The 13th, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And though I thought I had a good grasp of what was happening in our incarcerated, in our system, in our criminal justice system, I didn't know. And it was a point of no return. When I realized the reality of what happens when we have children who are not starting off on an even platform, they're coming up with situations where they're being raised by stressed family members who are not able to deal with those buffers. So we're seeing families with depression, with addiction, and all of those things were just binding them where they could not thrive. And I thought, this is it. Like, this is something we've got to help our students find, and their parents find, mental health solutions. And I just saw that was so insufficient to truly make a difference in their lives. And I felt like I was spinning my wheels, because I want to teach them Romeo and Juliet. I want to teach them, thesis statements and research papers. But the bottom line is that their learning was impacted by how we, in many ways, society failed them and their parents. And I thought, if we truly want a better world, if we really want a world where we have less crime, then we would take mental health seriously, and we would take taking care of students' needs from early childhood education on up seriously, because what we're doing isn't working. But we do have a formula. We know that children who are taken care of, who have their needs met at a younger age, are going to grow up with a better situation, less likely to be incarcerated themselves, less likely to have poor economic situations. So I thought, this is it. I want to be part of the solution that deals with preventative, that catches them when they're younger, so that way they have a stronger platform to grow up and thrive.
I love that. And so, as a former classroom teacher myself, that resonates with me so much. We just had Jennifer Landry on talking about schools and her work with youth. And schools, right, surprisingly, for those of us who work in schools, it's not surprising, but for a lot of people, schools are a surprising connection to the criminal justice system. I wonder for you on a personal level, because unfortunately, that safety net, schools often are the only thing provided. But that puts a lot of stress on teachers, right? That you have to do so many things and wear so many hats. What is it like for educators, or for even your own experience, to have to be such a large part of that safety net? Because you talked a lot about prevention, and right, if schools are the only prevention, then it's not a very wide net, right? We need a lot of different sort of preventative measures. What's it like for teachers in this situation of being sort of like expected to work miracles?
It feels like being given a puzzle with very many of those puzzle pieces missing. So for a teacher at the very beginning, I think I was resentful because it was completely overwhelming. College doesn't prepare you to deal with children who are underfed, who are abused. There is just no handbook for that. And I think as I got older and as I started learning about what is the reality of these students' lives, like we can say, oh, personal responsibility. Your parents should have not done whatever it is. But have we really grasped with the idea that they themselves, their parents, had issues growing up that were not met? And so as a teacher, I feel like it's a big secret. We're supposed to figure it out, right? We're supposed to go the extra mile. We're supposed to listen to them. And all of those things are important. But there is such an insufficient amount of support for that. So teachers are incredibly important as the front line to helping students thrive. But it's not just us. It's the grocery worker for the community in which they shop. It's their doctors. It's our local judges. It's the whole entire community that is responsible for helping the situation. And I just feel like everyone is pretending that classroom teacher has all the tools at her disposal, and we simply don't. And it really does feel overwhelming. So it changes how you see the system. It changes how you deal with more grace with students. But then you still have a lot of that pressure for performance, state testing, and things like that don't take into account the amount of things, the amount of stress that students are coming to school with. Not having school supplies, being ashamed of not having what they need, hiding it. It's a lot. And I really do feel like it's unsustainable, especially the pressure that our schools are under with the lack of funding. If I could wave a wand, Matt, I would have a social worker at every single school. Counselors, that's not the same thing, right? Because we know counselors deal with like state testing and things like that, but actual mental health professionals, if you are telling me, if you're a state legislator or somebody in charge and with power, and you're telling me that you care about public education or children, I want to see the mental health response. I want to see you taking care of the teachers so that they can be not stressed, so that way they can be the buffer to our students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as being an educator, a lot of people recognize the important roles teachers have. And even in school spaces, they are trusted resources by students very often in that sense. So we have a few more minutes left. I am curious, you said you watched 13th. It was a point of no return. And I think that's true for a lot of people. They watch that and they are astounded. There's usually a point that people, right, their consciousness clicks on and they don't look at things the same way. What continues to give you hope in your work as an educator, in your work about criminal justice reform, in your work with youth? What gives you hope in all of this?
That's such a great question. Meeting people who have been impacted. Meeting those who have been impacted by our criminal justice system and seeing the ways that people have triumphed through incredible obstacles, that gives me hope. Seeing that there is redemption on the table and seeing that if I can help perpetuate that, then I know that my son and my students are going to grow up and do something beautiful in this world. So my students give me hope because when they do come to you and you do wipe those tears and you do send them a birthday present or you do find their hobbies and connect to that, they respond. They're hesitant sometimes. And I think a lot of teachers are ill-equipped to deal with that. So if you are not already just personally involved, if you are just teaching and my goodness, that's enough on its own, raising a family, there is not a whole lot of investment on trauma-informed responses. We'll maybe do a professional development, but that is that's not going to meet them where they are. So the hope is my students, seeing people who have been impacted doing beautiful things. That gives me hope, and that sustains me to know that there is something that we can do. And as long as I am part of it, I don't feel like I get too overwhelmed. It's the not being a part of it, the not knowing what to do, yet being in the midst of it is what kind of leads you to despair. And so being part of the solution gives me hope.
That's wonderful. Melanie, thank you so much. We have run out of time today, but we will see you again, I'm sure, and we'll have you back on very soon.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Sway.
All right.
Hello and welcome back. And our next guest is none other than the beautiful Miss Angela Eaglin, who is not only the vice president of the Village 337, she is also a licensed counselor, and she is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
So we know that, you are a mental health professional and you deal with all sorts of people. And today we're really focusing on kids and kind of wanting to hear about your encounters, especially with incarcerated kids or kids who are just, living in some very unhealthy environments and how that affects their mental health and your experience. But first, I would love to hear your story as to how you kind of got into all of this amazing work that you guys are doing over at the Village 337, and even the fact that you're a vote member and how all of that has come together for you in all the work that you're doing.
So yeah, it goes way back. I've always been an advocate for others, my whole life, even from when I was very, very young. I was the person that got called on in my friend group and my family group for help with something to help them advocate any area in their life. So I've always been advocating for people individually. When Trayford Perrin got murdered in August 2020 is when the Village 337 came together, literally on the streets of Lafayette by blocking off of Anson Thruway. So that was the moment when I realized there were others in my community who also were against some of the things that I was against and for the causes that I were, and were ready to physically do something about it in a show of Black resistance. And we just kept it going after that and kept meeting, and we became officially the Village 337 a few months later. But that's how the Village began. Then after that, we've been kind of just hitting the ground running. We did some protests for Ronald Green after that. I believe that was September, the end of September, October 2020 at the Colonel's house. And we just simply demanded that he resign and released the body cam footage. And he resigned. He didn't release the body cam footage. We advocated for Kawan Charles that year also, and there are so many others. Currently, I think we have 22 families we advocate for at the Village 337. And that's how and all of us at the Village, especially the board members and those in leadership, have been advocating, doing humanitarian work our whole lives, pretty much. So that's kind of how we all came together with that, and we love it. We enjoy doing the work. It's not paid, but our souls are being fed that we're doing something for our community. We're not just sitting around and talking about all the negative impacts and the negative changes and the laws that are being made that are impacting marginalized communities around us and communities of colors. We're actually doing something about it. So we enjoy doing this work. And I think I met you probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, while doing this work, and started volunteering with Vote. And when I learned some of the initiative that Vote does and you guys' mission statement, I was like, hey, this is really similar to the Village, but a real more specific type of concentration. And I was like, I'm gonna join, because it's already something that the Village does. We just didn't have the capacity to focus on that particular area as you guys are able to. So that's my way of staying connected to that area in a more connected way as opposed to with the village, because we have such a large umbrella with civil rights, and political rights, that it covers. Some areas may not get as much attention as it needs. So that's my story with the village and my vote membership. And there was another question. It was a three-part question. What was the third one?
I'm going to follow up on that third part here based on some of the things you said, because what struck me was you mentioning how the village came together in that meeting other people in your community who had the same interests. And so I'm wondering, how has that intersection of community, community seeking justice, right, in that big umbrella, and youth, sort of in the youth in Lafayette, intersected? Like, where do you see the needs? Where do you see the work in that space?
So how it intersected was, we have people who are in their 60s connecting now with teenagers for the same causes, that maybe wouldn't have met each other before, or maybe wouldn't have crossed paths, that are learning from each other. So now we have elders in our communities who are learning from the youth who want to get involved in the same thing that they were doing in the 60s and 70s. So that's one intersection, and we're all understanding each other and learning from each other on both sides. The work that's come from that, we've done food pantries, we've done voter registration drives, and we continue to do all of those. We've done fundraisers for the communities, we fed the homeless, we provided different things for the communities, and we connect people a lot. That's one major thing that I do with some our resources at the village. Someone calls us, they need help for something. We may not have that specific resource available, but I connect them to someone who could, whether it's mental health treatment that they need. Even though I'm a licensed counselor, I don't do mental health treatment when they come through us that way, because it's a conflict. But I do refer them. If they have insurance, I help them locate the insurance policies and what they need to go through for that. If they don't have insurance, I help them get insurance. We keep track of them. As long as they stay in touch with us, we stay in touch with them. And the same thing with the families that we advocate for. We connect them to the resources that they may need. A lot of families we advocate for, they may come to us because of a civil rights violation, and then we find that there are other needs that they may need. So we believe in total wellness when helping people in the community. Another way that we've intersected is kind of been bridging the gap or trying to bridge the gap between what the young people in our community feel about law enforcement and politicians, right? So we've gone to city council meetings. We're going in meetings with the mayor and with city council members to try to say, hey, look, this is going on. And we pay you guys a salary, so you need to listen, or we're going to get you voted out. This is, it's a demand, it's not an ask. So we're really big on those types of civil rights and just informing people and educating them. And a lot of our community, they don't know. They don't know what their rights are. They're not sure how things go. So our big thing is educating and empowering our community. And that's been a really, really big thing that we're very proud of.